Welcome to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 151 of the podcast. And in this edition of the podcast, I'm talking about Mets ace Jacob degrom, because degrom is one of the best pitchers in baseball, but he keeps going through the same struggles with his own team. And that struggle is the Mets do not give Jacob degrom enough runs. Now, the Mets had a fantastic offseason. They changed ownership. They brought in star shortstop Francisco Lindor, and shortly after they gave him a massive contract extension. So things are looking up for the Mets. They even brought in a new catcher in James McCann. But one recurring issue keeps coming up over and over again. When Jacob degrom pitches, the Mets don't give him enough run support. Degrom is one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. He's a two-time Cy Young Award winner. He has a career record of 2.59, but there is a belief among me and other people that if he were on one of these big market teams that have big market offenses, like, for example, the Red Sox or Yankees or these other teams that score a ton of runs, that he would be able to win 20 games easily each and every season. DeGrom's career high of wins is only 15, but he has pitched way better for a guy that should get those amount of wins. And I understand what people will say when they hear this. They'll say there'll be those people out there that say wins don't matter. But I think they do matter legacy-wise. We look back at these pitchers and we definitely look back at their wins. There'll be those people that say wins only matter when it comes to the postseason. Well, look at a guy like Curt Schilling. Guess what? He's not getting in the Hall of Fame, maybe because of the ridiculous comments he's made publicly, but also because his regular season wins are not there. He's a great postseason pitcher, but through the eyes of the voters, that doesn't seem to be enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. And degrom might be going through that same issue. He might not get enough career wins to go to the Hall of Fame, even though he's one of the best pitchers of his era. This happened to another Mets ace, Johan Santana. During his era, Johan Santana won 2 Cy Youngs. He is one of the best pitchers I've ever seen throw a baseball, yet he had 0.0 chance of making the Baseball Hall of Fame because he didn't pitch long enough and because he didn't have the wins required. Yet a guy like Mike Mussina, who has 270 career wins, wasn't great in the postseason and didn't win a Cy Young, was easily able to make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's what we're talking about here. Yes, there are the nerds out there that say those things don't matter, but for a guy like Jacob degrom, the 2 Cy Youngs look great, but at the end of the day, I'm fearful that that won't be enough to get him into the Hall of Fame, and I put him up there with the best pitchers of this era. He's right up there with Clayton Kershaw. He's right up there with Max Scherzer and also Justin Verlander. But those other guys will have a way better chance of making the Baseball Hall of Fame because they have those wins. And the Mets haven't been able to get Jacob degrom the wins he deserves. Now, the other argument I find equally ridiculous is that Jacob degrom should pitch better in these low-run games. How much better can he pitch? This past week, he pitched against the Marlins in a 1-0 loss where he struck out 14 batters. And in 2018, degrom had 12 starts where the Mets scored 2 runs or less, and he was 0-7 in those starts with a 1.87 ERA. How can you be better than 1.87? Bob Gibson had the lowest ERA. Remember that? He still won like 20 games with the St. Louis Cardinals. If your ace pitcher is pitching that well, you need to win those games, and he should get the wins. I think it's very easy to look at it right now and say wins don't matter. We all think Jacob degrom is one of the best pitchers of his era, but my biggest fear is when Hall of Fame voting happens and Jacob degrom only has 150 wins, that they're not going to put him in the Hall of Fame, even though he's one of the best pitchers I've ever seen. And the miraculous thing about Jacob degrom is he's not even the one complaining about it. It's the Mets fans. It's the other Mets players are pointing it out that they have done wrong by Jacob degrom. He has not gotten enough run support. That is clearly evident. And think about this. There's another Mets pitcher that has had issues with the organization. That's Noah Syndergaard. We all know that Noah Syndergaard has demanded trades. He's been on the trade block. He has been vocal about his disappointment during his time with the franchise. Yet Jacob degrom has taken another approach. He has just been silent. He just goes out there and pitches and doesn't talk about it at all. He deserves better from the Mets. And I do hope the Mets end up scoring him some runs because he's never had that year. He deserves to have years where he's like 21-5 or 22-4 because he has been that good. He is one of those rare pitchers that can go out there each and every start and pitch a lot of innings. Those guys are few and far between, and some of the other ones only get to do it because they are on better baseball teams. And when it comes to this issue, I don't only think it's just a Jacob degrom issue. The Mets have had other star pitchers. Johan Santana, Matt Harvey, Noah Syndergaard, like I mentioned. They have had some of the best pitchers in National League history on their roster, but they haven't been able to give them run support. They've never had great offenses. Yes, the Mets have had some great offensive players like David Wright. They had Pete Alonso now, Yoenis Cespedes, but they have never had the best offensive team in the National League or anywhere near that. They have been inconsistent developing good positional players. Their outfield right now is kind of embarrassing. They don't have a star-studded lineup. Their biggest issue is on offense, and it's been that way for 5 or 6 years now. And yes, you brought in Francisco Lindor, you brought in one star, you brought in James McCann, who's a steady bat at the catcher position, but it is an organizational issue that you do not have enough offense. What this really reminds me of is back when Felix Hernandez was the ace of the Seattle Mariners, and it was so painful to see him go out there and pitch like a master, and yet during his Cy Young season, Felix Hernandez only won 13 games. But everyone knew that if he were on a bigger market team like the Dodgers, Red Sox, or Yankees, he could easily win 20 games easily. And that's why I think there are people out there that don't care about the wins anymore, because we look at it and we go, look, if that guy were on a better team, he would get more wins. That doesn't show how good he is as a pitcher. The problem with that is, what is Felix Hernandez's chances at making it into the Baseball Hall of Fame? I feel like in the moment we say wins don't matter, but then when it comes down to the Hall of Fame ballot, those guys don't end up getting in. How is Johan Santana not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but Mike Mussina is? Johan Santana was the ace of the Minnesota Twins, winning 2 Cy Young Awards. He pitched a no-hitter for the New York Mets. He was one of the most consistent pitchers of his era. He had a deadly changeup, yet he had 0.0 chance of making it into the Baseball Hall of Fame because he didn't have enough wins. That needs to stop. You can't at one point say wins don't matter, and then when it comes to a career and its Hall of Fame legacy, say that that's the only thing that does matter. That's why we are in this weird standstill when it comes to pitchers. Justin Verlander is a surefire Hall of Famer because not only does he have the 2 Cy Young Awards, he also was an MVP and has a ton of wins, but he's also been on teams that have had explosive offenses. Remember those Tiger teams with Miguel Cabrera, those Astros teams? Justin Verlander has pitched on some pretty good offensive teams, so why should he benefit from that over Jacob degrom, who's never pitched on a team that's had one of the best offenses in baseball? It just doesn't make any sense how we're judging pitchers, and nobody is judging degrom right now in the moment, but they will when it comes to his Hall of Fame chances, and that's what I'm thinking about, because like I said, I think he's one of the 4 best pitchers of his era, along with Verlander, along with Scherzer, and along with Clayton Kershaw. The biggest difference between Clayton Kershaw and Jacob degrom is that Clayton Kershaw is on the Dodgers, where they come out of the woodworks with the star positional players like Corey Seager, Jock Peterson, Max Muncy comes out of nowhere and produces. He's just on a more stable organization. That's what he has over Jacob degrom. I don't think Jacob degrom is a lesser pitcher than Clayton Kershaw. I think Clayton Kershaw is the best lefty of his generation, but he's also benefiting from the fact that he's on the LA Dodgers, a big spending team and a team that is great at drafting positional talent around them. Not only do the Dodgers have Mookie Betts, but they also have Cody Bellinger, homegrown positional talent, something the Mets don't have. And sometimes in a blue moon they get one like Pete Alonso, but then the rest of the team is not great around Jacob deGrom, and that needs to change or it's going to affect Jacob deGrom's legacy. And you can't argue that because I've seen other players be affected by it. Again, Johan Santana, Curt Schilling, those guys don't have the wins. And during the moment we say wins don't matter, then what does matter? Why isn't Johan Santana in the Hall of Fame? Because he didn't get enough wins. And the same fate is probably going to happen to Felix Hernandez and Jacob deGrom. And for me, that's criminal. Here's another comparison to make. I love CC Sabathia. I think he's one of the best pitchers of his era. But you know who I also love even more? Jon Lester. Jon Lester deserves to be in the Hall of Fame just as much, if not more, than CC Sabathia. But because Sabathia has the wins, he has a better chance. How is that possible when all I hear on television 24 hours a day is how wins don't matter? Then if they don't matter, why does the Hall of Fame still count wins over almost anything? Jon Lester is going to have a tougher time getting into the Hall of Fame than CC Sabathia, even though he's won World Series with the Cubs and Red Sox, even though he's one of the best playoff pitchers I've ever seen, and even though I constantly hear that wins don't matter, yet CC Sabathia will have a way better chance of making the Baseball Hall of Fame than Jon Lester. That just doesn't make sense. That's why how we judge pitchers needs to change, not only by people who cover the sport, but by the Hall of Fame itself. It's ludicrous for us to say Jacob deGrom is one of the best pitchers of his era, and then him having to struggle to make it in the Hall of Fame because he doesn't have wins, because his organization is unstable and doesn't surround him with talent. It just doesn't make any sense how we're judging the modern pitchers. Max Scherzer has played with Bryce Harper, Miguel Cabrera, Anthony Rendon, Juan Soto, way better offensive talent than Jacob deGrom has. I love Max Scherzer. He's one of the best pitchers of his era. He's not that much better than Jacob deGrom. Yet, he will probably get a way higher percentage of Hall of Fame votes because he has wins. That doesn't make any sense when, again, all I hear about is how wins don't matter. And that's why I care about this Jacob deGrom thing. I don't really care if he's mad at the team or he's not mad at the team. I don't really care about the Mets and their situation. I care about Jacob deGrom's legacy because he's one of the best pitchers I've ever seen. And if you want to have a Hall of Fame with the best pitchers ever, then I think Jacob deGrom needs to be included on that list. I don't think the Hall of Fame takes into account how tough it is to be an ace on a bad team. There are some really good pitchers playing right now that are the aces of bad teams. Look at a guy like Aaron Nola on Philadelphia. If Aaron Nola were on the Yankees with Garrett Cole and that offense, he would have a way better time of getting 15 to 20 wins easily. But last year with the Phillies, he was 5-5, and it basically has to be win day whenever Aaron Nola pitches. All the pressure is on Aaron Nola. Yet, he is one of the best pitchers of his era. He was a Cy Young candidate not that long ago. It is grueling being the ace of a bad team. It is way easier to be Garrett Cole on the Yankees than it is to be Aaron Nola or Jacob deGrom, because Garrett Cole has that offense with Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Aaron Hicks, Luke Voit. There's so many good offensive players on the Yankees. They're going to get him run support. Aaron Nola has to be the absolute ace of the Phillies for them to be a good team. Jacob deGrom has to be the absolute ace. And I think that's why Jacob deGrom ended up winning those Cy Youngs, because people came to their senses and say, look, he is one of the best players of his era. He is the best pitcher right now. Even though he doesn't get run support, he doesn't get a lot of wins, his ERA is so much better than the next guy that we have to give him the Cy Young Award. And that's great to do in the moment, but my biggest fear is that when his career ends and he only has 110 wins or whatever he's going to get with the Mets, that they're going to look at it and go, we can't put this guy into the Hall of Fame because he didn't reach the stupid 200 plateau. I think this should be a general rule. If you win 2 or more Cy Young Awards, you should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, especially especially over people like Curt Schilling or Mike Mussina. Those guys are great pitchers. I think both should be in the Hall of Fame. Schilling's not, but Mussina is. They should both be in the Hall of Fame. But if you win 2 Cy Young Awards, you definitely deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Jacob deGrom should make the Hall of Fame. Tim Lincecum should make the Hall of Fame, for crying out loud. They won 2 Cy Young Awards. There were 2 years of their career where they were the absolute best pitcher that year. So why do I have to look back at their career and go, oh, they didn't reach that stupid win plateau? No, they were for a time the best pitcher in the sport. That needs to be rewarded over the stupid idea of longevity and win totals, because you can't for 1 second tell me that wins don't matter and then when a career ends not put a guy in the Hall of Fame because he doesn't have enough wins. That doesn't make any sense. Baseball needs to change how we look at pitchers, because it's not Jacob deGrom's fault. I hate that stupid argument that deGrom should pitch better in close games so he can get those wins. He was 0-7 in 2018 with a 1.87 ERA in games where the Mets scored 2 runs or less. He couldn't have pitched any better. His organization let him down, and it's up to the Baseball Hall of Fame to not let him down, because he is absolutely one of the best 4 pitchers of his era. Sadly, I don't see the situation improving that much. I think because of new ownership, they'll spend money, they'll try to bring in offenses, but as long as Jacob deGrom is on the Mets, this seems to still becoming a recurring issue. It has been an issue for the Mets for quite a long time. We've all talked about it. We all seemingly ignored it by giving him his 2 Cy Young Awards. But at the end of the day, please ignore it at the end of his career. Put Jacob deGrom in the Hall of Fame, because that's where he belongs. The other sad thing about these kind of pitchers is that they remain loyal to these teams. It would be so easy for Jacob deGrom not to have re-signed with the Mets and go on to a team like the Cubs that would have a formidable offense. But no, he decided to stay with the Mets. He should be rewarded for his loyalty and not hurt by it. It's the same with Felix Hernandez. It would have been so easy for Felix Hernandez to go to a team like the Yankees and win 18 games a year. But no, he wanted to stick it out with the Mariners. Now, some might call that stupid. Some might say he's trying to avoid playing for a big market. No, I would call it being loyal till the very end. And maybe that's stupid, but I also think that's courageous. And then if he did go to those big market teams, there would be those people who criticize them and say, oh, you're just going to a better situation. It's like a no-win situation for these pitchers who are aces of not very good, consistent baseball teams. It just doesn't make any sense what's going on with the Mets and Jacob deGrom. They have not tried to fix the situation. They are relying way too heavily on Jacob deGrom, and that's not his fault, and he shouldn't be punished for it. He is one of the 4 best pitchers of his era. It goes Kershaw, Scherzer, deGrom, Verlander. Those are the 4. I don't care what order you put those in. Jacob deGrom's name needs to be included. And my fear is that those other 3 will easily enter the Hall of Fame because they have the wins, they have the Cy Youngs, they have the World Series title, while Jacob deGrom will be left off the list because he doesn't have the wins. The Mets never end up winning the World Series, and he's just that forgotten guy like Tim Lincecum who won 2 Cy Young Awards, and it doesn't matter. Well, guess what? To me, it does matter, because he is one of the absolute best pitchers of his era. This was not a choice to be a Met. Yes, to re-sign with them was a choice, but it was a courageous one, and he shouldn't be hurt by it. Jacob deGrom is one of the best pitchers of his era. He's the best pitcher in the National League right now, and it's the Mets' fault for letting him down. So don't punish the legacy of Jacob deGrom by the failures of the New York Mets, one of the most chaotic organizations in baseball history. Jacob deGrom is the absolute best pitcher in the National League, and don't ever forget it. No matter if he has 9 wins this year or 25 wins, he is the best pitcher in the National League. I really do hope this does turn around for deGrom, but sadly it never seems to do with these kind of guys. It never turned around for Hernandez with Seattle. It never turned around for Johan with the Twins of the Mets. They keep on being the best pitchers pitchers, but then they don't get the win totals a guy like CC Sabathia would get only because he's on the New York Yankees. Those guys are just as good as Sabathia. They just don't have the win total because they're not on a dominant baseball team. I hope for the best for Jacob degrom, but I also hope for his legacy. He makes it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. It needs to happen. Don't use his lack of wins against him. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. So please rate, review, and subscribe.